Recently, the Washington Post ran a political cartoon depicting Republican presidential candidate Ted Cruz as an organ grinder with his two small children as dancing monkeys. There was a similar incident involving President Obama's two young daughters where a Republican staffer from Senator Lautenberg criticized the president's children. Let's compare how each incident was covered by the media.
Meantime, a Republican staffer on Capitol Hill is under fire this morning for harshly criticizing the president's daughters. The staffer suggested that Sasha and Malia are, quote, classless. Well, now there are calls for that aide to lose her job. NBC's Kristen Welker is at the White House this morning. Kristen, good morning to you.
Also playfully remarked that like all teenagers, they seemed less than impressed. But Elizabeth Lawton, the current communications director for Tennessee Congressman Stephen Fincher, slammed the girls on Facebook, writing, "Dear Sasha and Malia, I get you're both in those awful teen years, but you're a part of the first family. Try showing a little class and dress like you deserve respect, not a spot at a bar." That sparked a firestorm, with some accusing her of cyberbullying. The hashtag #FireElizabethLawton trending online. Later that day, Lawton apologized, writing, "After many hours of prayer, talking to my parents, rereading my words online, I can see more clearly just how hurtful my words were. But even some Republicans are still fuming."
This Hill staffer not only should be fired, this Hill staffer should jump over the White House fence and get on her hands and knees and apologize to the first family.
Now, late last night, Lawton responded to our request for comment by adding a direct apology to the Obama girls and family. Congressman Fincher did not return our requests for comment. Lawton is also a former aide for the Republican National Committee, and in a statement, RNC spokesperson Sean Spicer said he agreed that president's children are off limits, but also said the media coverage has been over the top, calling it appalling. The White House declined to comment. Matt, Savannah, back to you.
All right, Chris.
With Cruz's climb in the polls has come increased scrutiny. This Washington Post editorial cartoon depicting his children as holiday props drew Cruz's wrath. Inspired by this lighthearted ad.
And if you act now,
a parody that features Cruz and his children reading conservative Christmas stories. By late last night, the Cruz campaign was sending out fundraising emails asking for emergency contributions. The subject line read, "They attacked my children."
Trump isn't the only candidate who is bashing the press this morning. Ted Cruz is angry with the Washington Post editorial cartoon. It showed him as an organ grinder, using his daughters as holiday props.
Ted Cruz, meanwhile, in his own feud, not over words, but a picture. This one, a Washington Post editorial cartoon showing the senator as an organ grinder, his young daughters dancing monkeys. The cartoonist calling the kids fair game, claiming Cruz used them as political props in this campaign ad.
"I know just what I'll do," she said with a snicker.
That cartoon on the Washington Post website depicting Ted Cruz and his daughters in a demeaning way went too far, in your opinion?
Absolutely. I mean, we've always had this, call it an unwritten rule. Maybe we ought to write the rule. No kids. I mean, come on. And these are little kids. Ted Cruz is, I mean, this is, you know, everything feels as if the line got erased. And I think Donald Trump has made everybody think all's fair right now. But
you'll notice
boy,
during the coverage of when President Obama's children were criticized, the reporters noted that both sides of the aisle were calling for the resignation of the offender, but when Ted Cruz's children were criticized, Chuck Todd blamed Donald Trump for erasing the lines of civility and referred to it as an unforced error. Now, let's take a look at the consequences for the two people who criticized the politician's children.
And breaking news right now, we're getting word this hour the GOP communications staffer for Congressman Fincher is resigning over comments about Sasha and Malia Obama at last week's turkey pardon. NBC's senior White House correspondent Chris Chansing joins me now with the very latest. Chris.
Yeah, it's amazing how fast these things move. We were told this morning that Elizabeth Lawton wasn't expected in her office. Now word has come down that she is expected to resign. Let's go back to exactly what happened. Goes back to Wednesday and that turkey pardon, and both Sasha
Ted Cruz uses his kids as political props. Updated with statements. Editor's note from Fred Hyatt. It has generally been the policy of our editorial section to leave children out of it. I failed to look at this cartoon before it was published. I understand why Anne thought an exception to the policy was warranted in this case, but I do not agree. I'm not saying that one should have resigned and not the other, And I'm not saying that both should be able to keep their jobs. I'm saying they both should have resigned or be fired. The reporter who criticized Ted Cruz's children justified her attack by saying the kids were fair game because they appeared in a political advertisement. Newsflash: it is never justifiable to attack children, never. The editor of the Washington Post said he didn't see the cartoon before it was published and he doesn't agree with her. Not much of a consequence to the reporter, if you ask me.